have the kind of London dust that is that kind of silt that gets into everything, and eventually you just give up dusting it because it's just never going to disappear. Most of us now don't flinch when we see critters on the tube. Creatures, not individuals, but hey, there's those too. Actually, we kind of live in a nitty-gritty, earthy, dirty, grimy environment. And actually that's good and brilliant, but we're kind of engaged and we breathe it, it gets into our skin and it gets in our lungs, and it's part of us, it's part of our identity, and it's part of our identity here at Sanctuary. This is all important because what Ian Adams says is actually we need to create that monastic pattern of life in our day-to-day lives. We need to be people of the cave, of the refectory, and the road. We need to be people who are able to retreat away, to be in the cave, to be people who are able to pray and worship individually and with God, to read the scriptures, to kind of tuck ourselves away and reorientate ourselves and engage with God. We need times when we can be in the cave. I've read plenty of stuff on male psychology to know that for men means something very different than the... But let's just stick with the prayerfulness of being in the cave. So we've got the cave. He then says you need spaces which are the refectory. Now, in kind of traditional church life, in the monastic tradition, the refectory is the kitchen table. It's the place where you have the big, long table with the benches. For some of us, that will have been very similar to where we ate school dinners. That kind of wood table, communal space where you sit and you eat and you share the stories of life. Just imagine the table at your school dinner. The stories that table could tell if it could. Some of them not particularly wholesome, but can you just imagine? So the refectory is the place of story and of feasting, the refectory. And then he says that once you've retreated, once you've engaged with God, once you've centered yourself on Christ, once you've shared your story, shared your life, shared community, and shared a feast together, you're then resourced to go out onto the road, to be back where your lungs fill with soot, where the dust gets everywhere, where there's critters left, right, and centre, and actually you don't fear them anymore. Actually, what is it for us as Christian disciples to be people of the cave, the refectory, and the road? When we talk about being people of mission, it's about our engagement with God, it's about our engagement with ourselves and with our local community, and it's about the engagement with the world and our environment. Mission is about the action of God. It's about God being at work in all sorts of different places and with all sorts of different ways and means and mechanisms and tools. And some of those are within these amazing four walls, and quite a lot of that is God at work, where it's sooty and dusty and dirty and dank. And it's also, mission is then secondly about us as well. It's about our engagement in that. It's the stuff that we do, it's the stuff that we say, it's the stuff that we don't say, it's the places where we are, it's the air that we breathe. So when we're talking about putting mission into action, we're talking about taking all that we are, all that we know of God, and being able to notice where God is also at work. Mission is a way that we notice the kingdom, where we notice glimpses of grace. I read a blog post earlier this week, and I can't for the life of me find it again. It's really annoying. But this blog post was talking about how we notice the world around about us. And actually it's quite easy, especially when you're in a kind of routine and you get off at Westminster Tube or Victoria Station and you march to Central Hall and actually you've got a routine and you just don't notice the people passing you by. This blog post was really challenging. It said, how about when you leave your house, so for you tomorrow morning, pick a colour. Any colour. Have you got a colour? Oh, lots of blank faces. Oh, come on. I've only been talking 10 minutes. There's another 2 pages to go yet. Got a colour? Good? Okay. So tomorrow, now you've thought of your colour, notice whenever you see it. And if you've got one of these zizzy zappy smartphone things, take a photo every time you see something of that colour. I've been doing it with yellow this week. I love Fabio's jumper. It was the first thing I saw when I walked in the door. Chemist towel. You see, the scouring pads at the back. As soon as you've got a colour, you start seeing it everywhere. How do we pay that much attention when we're spending our day-to-day lives? Actually, maybe today, just take that away. Notice something different. Notice a colour for the next 24 hours and take photos and pin them onto the Sanctuary Facebook page, and we'll see what we find. My favourite was the yellow toilet, which was quite a delight and cost me 30p, as most do in central London. Diversion back. So how do we notice those moments of grace as well? How do we notice the kingdom in our midst? How do we create and make sure that we have the rituals and the challenges and just the eyes to see where God is at work? Mission is ultimately about a relationship. It's about our relationship with God, which means that we can notice where he's at work. It's about a relationship with ourselves, that we're confident enough in what we have to offer. Whether we haven't got the right words or we don't quite know what the right thing to do is, actually it's being confident enough to do something, or to be somewhere, or to be alongside and with. And it's about our relationship to other people and our environment. Mission is about making friends and sticking with it. There's a great story in a book called Same Kind of Different as Me, which is a book by a guy called Ron Smith, who's a multi-million-pound art dealer, and a guy called Denver. Now, Denver, the story is based in Louisiana. He's been on the streets for the best part of 30 years. So 3 decades on the streets. This guy knows the underworld of the deep south of America. And Denver and Ron end up, for various reasons, in a green branded coffee shop. Other brands are available. And they end up in this coffee shop together. And they sit down, and Denver says, I just want to be friends with you. And Ron's going, I just want to be friends. Let's just be friends. It's a really good thing. Let's be friends. And Denver just turns around. And I can imagine him staring Ron straight in the eye. And he said, the thing is, with you white folks, when you go fishing, catch a fish, take a photo, parade it for everybody to see, and then throw it back again. Us black folk, when we go fishing, catch a fish, show it off by building a fire and cooking it, and then we share together the product of our work. I'm going to be friends with you if you do it the black folks way. I'm not going to be a friend with you if you're just going to throw me back when you're done. I'm not going to be your trophy. Mission begins and ends with a relationship. It begins and ends with our relationship with God through Christ, but it also begins and ends with our desire just to make friends with people because that's a good thing to do, with no ulterior motive, with no quick access program, statement, diagram. That could be an end point, but that's not our motive or our kind of complete action. So I want to tell you a few stories about where grace is noticed in the gutter. I want to tell you a few stories about some friends of mine who have taken the time to notice where God might be at work and have lived in a missional way. Some of them have done amazing things. Some of them have done some really simple things. And I hope that this inspires you to notice grace in the gutter and to encourage you to be missional people, people of the cave, the refectory, and the road. First of all, there's a guy called Mike. Mike runs a community called Small Boat Big Sea down in New Zealand. And this community is a very small community, probably slightly smaller than we are here at Sanctuary. And they have a community rule. They have a commitment that people who join their community kind of sign up to on the dotted line. There's kind of a contract between them. And they have to eat with 3 people every week. They have to eat, and they commit to eating with a stranger, a friend, and someone from the community. Now that sounds quite a lot of eating. That sounds like an awful lot of meals where I can't shut the door and ignore the world. You know, the kind of Grey's Anatomy evenings. Excellent, there's one person that does, excellent. But those days where you kind of get home, put the kettle on, shut the door, and ignore the world, apart from, yes, well. They eat together 3 times a week, And they said, but actually, we eat 21 meals a week on average. That's not so many. It's only a seventh of your eating that you're sharing with somebody else. So have breakfast with someone, have lunch with someone else, have dinner with someone else, and you're done. Actually, let's eat together and build community. Really simple way of sharing stories. Remember in the cave, the refectory and the road. How can we build more refectory times in our rhythm? There's a guy called Simon. Simon works for the Methodist Church, and he teaches mission from Birmingham University. And part of their teaching is to send groups of students, not unlike yourselves, drive them to somewhere in and around Birmingham and the West Midlands, and to leave them there with the kind of challenge to do mission for 12 hours. Now, on this one occasion, as you can imagine, some of you are already here. I know, some of you are already going, oh my word, I'm not doing that course ever. Please don't send me anywhere. So anyway, he sends this group of people. And there was one group that really didn't want to do the exercise. There was one group that were really grumpy, really negative, really frustrated by the whole thing. And so they decided, eventually, that they were going to buy luggage labels and to stick them on the Christmas tree that was in the centre of the town. And all they were going to do was take these luggage labels, and around the security barrier that was around the Christmas tree, they were then going to tie these luggage labels with people's prayers on. Really simple. Nothing, not complicated in any way, shape or form. And it was kind of their act of passive resistance. They didn't want to do the exercise anyway. So luggage labels, getting people to write on with coloured pens and then tying it to the railings. It was about all that they could manage. About 5 weeks ago or so, Birmingham City Council rang my mate Simon to say that they'd loved the idea so much, could they make it part of all of Birmingham Christmas trees next year? The one community group that really didn't want to do mission at all, weren't setting out to change the world, and resentfully went to the local Ryman's and bought a packet of Sharpies and some luggage labels to stick on and graffiti over the safety barriers of the Christmas tree, end up potentially changing the whole of Birmingham City Council's attitude to the use of Christmas trees for next year. A friend of mine is called Kerry. Kerry works somewhere in the UK, and her job is to investigate people who are involved in human trafficking. And her job is to help rescue women who are caught in human trafficking, often in prostitution, rescue them whilst gathering enough evidence to prosecute their pimps and their owners. She works across the UK, working alongside some of the most broken people, often who have no identity cards. They know vaguely who they are, but there's no evidence of their existence in the UK. They're changing people's stories from being ones of nothing to refinding their identity. Some friends of mine are called Matt and Jules. They run an organisation which is now helping the UK NHS blood and organ donation unit encourage Christians around the country to sign up as blood donors and as organ donors. 1,000 people a year die unnecessarily because there aren't enough organ donors on the register. They need about 22,000 units of blood every single week, and there's not often enough supply to demand. What would it be for us to see part of our ministry, part of our mission, part of our using our bodies as mission to register to donate blood once every 16 weeks and to donate our organs either in this life if we've got too many or at the point in which we die? Actually, what is it for us to have a serious conversation about our generosity and the way in which we use our physical bodies and all that God has given us in order to bring life to other people? That to me just sounds like the gospel. Enabling other people to have life in all its fullness. And all I need to do is sit down and have a pint of blood pumped out of me, and I get free biscuits at the end. Result. They often have custard creams too. I'm not sure whether anybody saw it. A couple of weeks ago, there's a new show on ITV called Food, Glorious Food. And it's one of these cookery shows. They're trying to find the nation's favourite recipes. Marks and Spencer's has put up the prize. And there was one woman last week